Hi, my name is Hannah Gannon, and today we are going to be going over another interactive case study. This time we're going to be talking about decreasing the immune system's response in order to prevent organ transplant rejection. And specifically, we're going to be looking at kidney transplant rejection. So the specific medication that I decided to look at this week is what's called tacrolimus. And tacrolimus is a medication that is commonly given to just kind of overall help suppress the immune system following a transplant so that your own body isn't attacking that new organ that they just transplanted. So to begin, we are just going to look at how it targets the immune system specifically, as well as the pathway. So tacrolimus overall, what it does is it inhibits what's called calcineurin. Now, calcineurin is involved in the production of interleukin 2, which actually in turn promotes the proliferation of what's called T cells. T cells are a type of lymphocyte, and they are heavily involved in what's called the adaptive immune system. So our body has two different types of immune systems. One is called innate immune system, and the other one is adaptive immune system. So the adaptive immune system, the two big categories of lymphocytes are what's called like either B cells or T cells. So for T cells, they mainly operate by killing infected host cells, as well as activating other immune cells, or actually producing what's called cytokines. And B cells, in turn, their main function or responsibility is producing antibodies, and antibodies specifically target protein antigens on pathogens, and they're very specific for a type of pathogen. So that's how they operate. And both of those groups of cells are a part of what's called the adaptive immune system. So, like I said, overall, tacrolimus is really going to focus on decreasing the proliferation of T cells. So, now let's look at kind of the specific mechanism of how this kind of occurs. So what's going to happen is tacrolimus is going to bind to what's called immunophilin, and it creates almost like this complex. So this complex of immunophilin and tacrolimus is going to actually inhibit a calcineurin phosphatase, which is an enzyme, and this is in turn going to typically calcineurin phosphatase is responsible for activating T cells. So because you're inhibiting this enzyme, you're not able to activate T cells anymore. So overall, what this medication does is it really truly just works to decrease the activity and proliferation of T cells like we had discussed earlier. Now, overall, tacrolimus also just really inhibits any type of event or pathway that's really calcium dependent. It also in turn, it would also inhibit like apoptosis, cell degranulation, and also nitric oxide synthase activation. So another thing that I thought was pretty fascinating about this specific medication is that it actually increases the actions of what's called glucocorticoids. And these are molecules that actually work to fight inflammation in the body. And so tacrolimus, in some studies, it's been shown that it actually increases the activity and mechanisms of glucocorticoids. And it does so by binding to a specific site within the hormone receptor complex. And so that's kind of how that functions specifically. Now, overall, what does tacrolimus do to really downregulate the immune system? How does it produce this needed effect, especially following organ transplant? So, like we said before, tacrolimus is what's called an immunosuppressant drug. So it really just wants to aim at decreasing the activity of the immune system, and you want to do this because you don't want our own bodies to attack that new organ or see it as like a invader or pathogen or anything like that, something other than self. You don't want that to happen. You want to recognize it, or you want it to like see it as its like own host cell and whatnot. And so that's something that's really, really regulated and observed, especially following organ transplant. So hence why we look at these different medications to try to suppress the immune system to prevent overall rejection. So, like I've said before, tacrolimus really just inhibits the proliferation of T cells, which are a type of lymphocyte. And something that I thought was kind of interesting was that it actually so there's different types of what's called helper T cells. There's type 1 and type 2. So it actually has been shown to more severely suppress the actions of type 1 helper T cells compared to type 2 helper T cells. It also, tacrolimus has also been shown to impair the T cell mediated cytotoxicity. And lastly, so like we had discussed earlier, there's T cells and there's B cells. And because you are suppressing the T cell derived growth factors, you're actually overall impacting and creating this almost like unintended effect of actually impacting the B cell growth and antibody production, because those mechanisms are specifically reliant on these growth factors from the T cells. And because the T cells are, decreased in concentration, then you're going to obviously have an impact on, in turn, those B cells. And that's kind of like almost this unintended side effect. But both of those mechanisms kind of work and have a compounding effect to overall just decrease the activity of the immune system. So overall, tacrolimus is a medication that is given more specifically for people who have had different types of like kidney transplants, just because you really want to downregulate the immune system so that the immune system, our own immune system, doesn't attack the new kidney and see it as something other than itself or an invader. And and to do this, it actually impacts the T cell proliferation and overall the adaptive immune system. So thank you so much for listening. I just wanted to go over my references here. These are my 3 references that I gathered my sources from. One really quick thing that I did not mention. So this is the structure of tacrolimus, as you can see. And then this is the structure of the calcineurin phosphatase, that enzyme. And so I thought that was pretty fun just to kind of see the overall like different types of like secondary structures that they have. You can see like all those alpha helices, which is kind of fascinating that we have this technology to capture these incredible images. These, if you don't know, these are your kidneys, and so that is the type of transplant that we're kind of looking at in terms of tacrolimus. And again, my references, and then these are the URLs for the pictures that I had just shown you. So thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful night.